A live action movie of Eternal Champions? Let's talk about it. What is going on, everyone? We got some news here for you today. And Eternal Champions, a live action movie. Really? There hasn't been an Eternal Champions game since 1996. Yet now we're just going to say, hey, let's do a live action movie of Eternal Champions. I don't understand that whatsoever. Give us a new game first. I mean, we haven't had a new game since 96, so I don't know what this is all about. But we do have some other news as well that we're going to touch on. But first, we're going to start out with the Eternal Champions news. And this is coming from timeextension.com. All the news today is going to be coming from timeextension.com. So let's head over there and let's take a look at this. Zelda movie screenwriter is working on a live-action Eternal Champions film. So there's a Zelda movie coming, and that screenwriter is also working on Eternal Champions, a game that we haven't seen in decades. Let's see what it says. I just find this funny. Hollywood screenwriter Derek Connolly is penning the script for a live-action adaptation of Sega's fighting game Eternal Champions, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Connolly's credits include the Jurassic World movies. Now, see, he's got some serious credits here. Kong Skull Island, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, Detective Pikachu, and the yet-to-be-released Legend of Zelda movie, which is being directed by Wes Ball. He's also working on the script for the upcoming Transformers G.I. Joe crossover film. So this dude's got his hands full, to say the least. Sega's success with its Sonic movies has clearly emboldened the Japanese video game giant, as it has also inked a movie deal for Streets of Rage. Now, that one I understand, because there actually has been some new games, I should say, in the Streets of Rage world, and stated that it is open to bringing more of its IP to the big screen. Even so, Eternal Champions is a pretty deep cut. Released on the Genesis in 1993 at the height of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat's rivalry, it scored decent reviews and good sales, but never spawned a direct sequel. Eternal Champions Challenge from the Dark Side, an enhanced version released on Sega CD, came in 1995, while the spin-off titled Chicago Syndicate and Experts failed to register with the gaming public. Given that there hasn't been an entry in the franchise for decades, it's debatable that a large enough audience exists for an Eternal Champions flick, but the concept of combatants being pulled together from different points in history is at least a solid foundation for this kind of popcorn romp. Skydance is the production company involved, with David Ellison, Dana Goldberg, and Don Granger handling that side of things. Rob Ree, for a second there I thought it said Rob Fee, which he's a writer for WWE that's been writing the whole Bray Wyatt stuff, and then after Bray passed, obviously writing the stuff for the Wyatt Six. I was about to be intrigued by that, but it's Rob Ree, not Rob Fee. So he's executive producing, while Amy Rivera will act as overseer on behalf of Skydance. Sega's Toru Nakahara, I think I said that right, will also be on board as a producer. Is there any more? No. So, Eternal Champions. Let's go back here for a second. Eternal Champions has not been in our lives since the mid-90s, and they're thinking about bringing a movie out. Today's generation probably doesn't even know this game exists. The only ones that probably do know it exists are us, older retro gamers, or kids of retro gamers. I don't know. It's not even out there digitally to play. It's not like you can go out and buy a digital copy on PSN or Xbox Live or Game Pass or anything like that. It's not like it's out there to play. You can get it and play it on an emulator, obviously, or you can get the original system and play the original copies, obviously, as well. But the game just isn't out there. It just isn't out there. Maybe put the game back out there first. At least put the game back out there first. Put the original Eternal Champions back out there. Put the Sega CD version out there. And have them be a digital version that you can buy. At least put it out in the ether. And then maybe bring out a new game. I mean, I would love a new Eternal Champions game. It's been so long. It's been so long since an Eternal Champions game. I would love to have that. But I don't see that happening. But hey, maybe it will. Maybe it will. But yeah, an Eternal Champions live action movie. It would probably be pretty cool. Is it going to even do any good when nobody even knows about it at this stage? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Atari 400 Mini has an update. We have not looked at the 400 Mini on here yet, but we are going to read this. So I'm going to come over here. Let's go back over here. The new Atari 400 Mini update brings another classic game to the mini console. A new firmware update. And before we continue, I would like to say that on the Atari 2600 Plus that we reviewed recently, you'll see that I say that has firmware update capability. So if there's games that aren't compatible, they may be compatible in the future with the firmware updates. So that's also very cool that they have that. It's not like it's just out there and then it's done. It can actually be updated. A 2600 that can be updated via firmware. Who would have thought, right? Anyway, I do want to get one of these 400 minis. It says a new firmware update has just been released for the 400 Mini, bringing with it a range of new fixtures for the device as well as an additional game, the vertical shooter Caverns of Mars. This release takes the current total of preloaded games available on the device up to 26 from the 25 that were originally released on the device back in March. Caverns of Mars, in case you've never heard of it, sees players guiding a spaceship into a large cavern, blasting away at enemies, and collecting fuel to continue the descent. Kind of sounds like Scramble. It was originally published as a part of the Atari Program Exchange, APX, in 1981, a division of Atari that sold software via mail order for Atari 8-bit computers in the early 80s. Ah, the good old days. And was written by the high school student Greg Christensen with later modifications from Richard Watts of Macrotronics. It is often credited online as being the best-selling piece of software APX title, and even later became an official Atari product, being distributed first on diskette and later on cartridge. Since then, it has also appeared on the Atari Flashback 2 game console as one of the pre-installed games and has also served as the inspiration for Caverns of Mars Recharged, a modern successor for Nintendo Switch, PC, PS4, PS5, and Xbox consoles. The Atari Flashback 2. Of all the at-games Atari Flashback consoles, or was that even an at-games product at the time? I can't actually remember, because I know the Flashback 2 was like legit, right? And I have a Flashback 2. Maybe we'll review it, but I do have a Flashback 2. Maybe we'll do a video on it. But easily, out of all the Flashback systems, it was the best, and I think is still the best. Obviously, the 2600 Plus is not a Flashback system. It's an actual system to play your cartridges on. But the Atari Flashback 2, in my opinion, definitely was the best because it had legit hardware. So, we may have to, maybe I'll do a video on that. Retro Games, the company behind the Atari 400 Mini, made the announcement that the title had been added to the device earlier today in a blog post, which includes instruction on how to apply the update. In this blog post, the company also outlined a bunch of additional changes too, including fixes for missing graphics in Mule, analog stick mapping for 5200 controllers, a missile command save state reset issue, and much, much more. So, very interesting. The Atari 400 Mini. I want to get one. I was actually thinking about getting one, and then I seen the 2600 Plus, and that grabbed me right away. So that's what we ended up going with at that time. But I do want to get a 400 Mini. I think those would be cool to have. And finally, for today's news, we're going to cover something that I find very intriguing, and that is a fan-made GTA 3 Dreamcast port. That's right, a port of GTA 3 to the Dreamcast. Let's take a look over here. Fan-made GTA 3 Dreamcast port looks close to achieving the impossible. Crazy. Since we first reported on the fan-made Dreamcast port of GTA 3, The project has seen a fair amount of development and is now in an even more impressive state. We're not gonna look at the video right now. Let me read this. Okay, goddammit, I know a lot of you saw the new GTA 3 dev build for Sega Dreamcast today, but after reading a douchey comment from some PS2 fanboy, I decided that I wasn't satisfied making an official post with that performance. So here it is, with Jackson's updated clipping. See what it says here. First thing you'll notice is that the majority of the glitched out polygons have been fixed, with the only exception being missing polygons which are intersecting the near plane, which we still need to properly clip. I think they're going to be able to do it. They also confirmed that there's a lot of additional hardware acceleration present in this new build. The Dreamcast still has the PC's draw distance by default, which is further than the PS2, so it's probably already full speed at the PS2's draw distance, he adds. The PS2 version features a dynamic lighting system implemented the full Fong shading model, which we haven't even looked into yet, and to pull that off, it's going to take every Dreamcast optimization trick in the book. Stay tuned. I think it can be done. I mean, look at how far they've already come. Here's an actual hardware capture someone just sent me of our Sega Dreamcast port of GTA 3 running from our latest GitLab branch, and holy shit, it can handle that? What the WTF? We have only just begun to bust out the big guns, and while we might not have dynamic lighting yet, oh, it just cuts off there. We're just going to take a look. Okay. Is it running a little slow? No, it's crazy that it's doing all that. Wow. That's a lot of people. There's never that many people on the screen in regular GTA 3. So I don't see how it's going to be a problem there. There's never that many people on the screen at the same time in the regular 3 on PS2. So since we last reported on the fan effort to bring Grand Theft Auto 3 to the Dreamcast, there have been some pretty exciting developments, as spotted by the YouTuber The Sega Guru. Among the biggest updates are that the game can now technically run on unmodded hardware, and that there seems to be now a team of other Dreamcast developers helping SKMP to bring the project to life. For instance, the fan developer Frogbull, who is well known in the Sega homebrew community for their impressive work on unofficial tech demos of Metal Gear Solid 2 for Dreamcast and Final Fantasy VII for Saturn, has now come on board the project to help out and has already employed some clever speed hacks alongside correcting the colors from the purple nightmare that was shown off in previous videos. Meanwhile, the GUI designer Adam Burrell has done some amazing VMU art for the game, which could also potentially find its way into the finished port. You can watch Frogbull's demonstration of the game on Real Hardware below, as well as the Sega Guru's video on the progress made so far. So head on over there if you guys want to really see how that turned out. But man, Grand Theft Auto 3 on Dreamcast. And it's looking good. Like, they don't have a whole lot more to do to make it just playable all around. It's playable now, it looks like. But the clipping up in the near plane obviously needs to be addressed. But once they get that going, I mean, who the hell needs... I mean, the lighting will be an interesting thing. I want to see them pull that off. And I'm sure they will. But who even needs it? It's playing. And it just shows you that what can be done on the Dreamcast. And the Dreamcast died way too early, man. Way too early. Just a damn shame. It's so much potential with the Dreamcast, and it just went downhill. And some people will say it's because of the fact that people were burning home backup games and everything else because it could play burned discs and everything else. I don't know. I think Sega just bowed out because the PS2 was raging, going crazy. Xbox was showing up and going crazy, and Sega was like, "Nah, I'm done." You know, and I mean, you see some design elements in the original Xbox from the Dreamcast. So, plus Sega was working with Microsoft at the time and had Microsoft CE or whatever it is, Windows CE in the Dreamcast. And I think Sega just bowed out at the time. It's just sad because I think it could have been something, and I would love to have Sega making consoles again, but it's never going to happen. Unless they do what Atari did and give us like legit reissues of old consoles, which I would really love. And that's why I love the 2600 Plus, because Atari gave us a reissue, sort of a old console, but modernized, that we can play on our modern TVs, get firmware updates throughout the course of time, that they improve things with it and whatnot. And I just think that there's a market for that. Yeah, there's a market for just being able to buy all this crap digitally and whatever, but you know what? People like to collect stuff. They like the physical piece. They like to have that physical piece, physical game to put on the shelf, so forth and so on. And it's not just us older retro gamers. It's just not, because I've seen a lot of young gamers wanting that too. The market is there. I mean, think about it. We don't need vinyl records. Why would we need vinyl records when everything's all digital? Well, there's a huge market for vinyl records because obviously it's sought after, because it's a piece that you can collect, put on your shelf. It just has something about it that you can't get from the digital, just having it digitally, your music. So, yeah, I don't know. That's the news for today. And if anything else crazy comes up that I want to talk about throughout the week, we'll be back to talk about it. But until then, I will catch you all down the road.